You ever hear something that doesn't just pass through your ears but lands somewhere, deeper, buried beneath the noise? Beneath the ego, beneath the distractions of everyday life? That's what truth does. It doesn't beg for attention. It doesn't scream. It whispers. And when it does, it touches a place in you that words can't explain. It's not about how loud something is. It's about how real it is. That's what happened when Angelina Jolie made her statement about Islam. It wasn't the kind of thing people expected. But the impact wasn't in the volume, it was in the weight. The truth she spoke hit people right in the soul. There's something sacred about a moment when a person recognizes something bigger than themselves. When they speak from a place of sincerity, you can feel it. It's not rehearsed. It's not crafted to impress. It's raw. And that rawness, that's what the soul responds to. Jolie's words didn't just travel across headlines or trend on timelines. They move through hearts. Because when truth speaks, it bypasses the surface and goes straight to the center of who you are. That's why people were shaken, not because of what she said, but because of what they felt when she said it. Truth doesn't care about image. It doesn't need to be packaged in perfection. In fact, it usually shows up in the broken places, in the moments of silence, in the pauses between the noise. It finds you when you least expect it, and when it finds you, there's no unhearing it. Something inside shifts. That's what makes it so powerful. Jolie didn't try to convert anyone. She didn't argue or debate. She simply shared something that moved her, something she knew. And that knowing, that quiet certainty, was louder than any speech or lecture could ever be. Because the soul recognizes truth. It's not a debate. It's a feeling. It's a moment of clarity that cuts through years of confusion. It's like a light turning on in a dark room you didn't even realize you were in. That's what her statement did for so many. It reminded them of something they always knew, but had buried under layers of noise and fear and pride. It's easy to ignore truth when it's spoken by strangers or wrapped in unfamiliarity. But when someone the world watches stops and says, "This is what I found," it forces people to listen. Not because of who she is, but because of the truth itself. And maybe that's why the reaction was so strong. Because deep down, the world is starving for truth. We're surrounded by distractions, caught up in illusions, always chasing something. But truth doesn't chase you, it waits. And when you're finally still enough to hear it, it changes everything. Jolie's words were a reminder that no matter who you are, what you've done or where you come from, truth doesn't discriminate. It finds its way to you. And when it does, the soul doesn't just hear it, it knows it. That's why her statement shocked the world, not because it was controversial, but because it was undeniable. And when the soul hears the truth, it never forgets. Peace isn't found in noise, achievements, or the approval of others. It's not something you can hold by or even chase. Real peace, the kind that quiets the storm inside you, comes when you stop running. When you let go, when you finally surrender. That word surrender often gets misunderstood. People think it means giving up, being weak, or backing down. But in reality, surrender is one of the strongest things a human being can do. It takes courage to let go of control. To admit you don't have all the answers. To open your heart to something greater than yourself. Angelina Jolie's journey led her to that kind of surrender. Not the kind that gets attention. Not the kind you announce to the world, but the quiet, personal kind that happens deep within the soul. In her words, there was a reflection of someone who had seen enough of the world to know that success doesn't guarantee peace, that fame doesn't silence the inner emptiness. She spoke of Islam not as an idea, but as a path, one that helped her rediscover stillness, purpose, and a kind of serenity she couldn't find anywhere else. And at the center of that path was surrender, not to people, not to systems, but to God. In Islam, peace and surrender are tied together. You don't just pray to find peace, you surrender to God, and peace finds you. It wraps around your heart when you bow your head. It fills your lungs in the pause between your words. It settles in your chest when you say, "I trust you," even when nothing makes sense. That's not easy. In a world that teaches us to always be in control, to fight for power, to chase validation, it's hard to surrender. But that's where the power lies. In letting go of everything the ego clings to, in releasing the weight we carry without even realizing it. Jolie's reflection didn't sound like someone who wanted to impress the world. It sounded like someone who had finally stopped trying to impress anyone, and had chosen instead to be real, with herself, with her creator, with her purpose. And in that honesty there was peace. You could hear it. You could feel it, because the kind of peace that comes from surrender is different from any temporary comfort the world offers. It's not based on circumstances. It doesn't vanish when things go wrong. It stays, it anchors you. It becomes a part of who you are. Many people live their whole lives searching for peace. They move from one thing to another, hoping the next job, relationship, or accomplishment will fill the void. But the void doesn't need more things. It needs connection. It needs truth. It needs surrender. And when you surrender, not out of fear, but out of love, out of trust, peace walks in, silently, gently, completely. That's the kind of peace Angelina Jolie touched on. A peace that doesn't shout, doesn't perform, doesn't need to be proven. Just the stillness of knowing that you're exactly where you're meant to be, with the one who created you. And once you feel that peace, nothing else compares. Because real peace doesn't come from holding on, it comes from letting go. In a world that's constantly screaming for attention, where the loudest voices often drown out the most important truths, finding light can feel impossible. We're surrounded by chaos, by conflict, by opinions stacked on top of opinions. But in the middle of all that noise, sometimes something simple and pure cuts through like a quiet beam of light. That's what happened when Angelina Jolie spoke about Islam. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't dramatic. It was sincere. And in that sincerity, people saw something they weren't ready for. Light. For so long, Islam has been misrepresented. Twisted in the media, misunderstood by many, often portrayed as harsh or foreign. But Jolie saw something different. Not through the lens of headlines or hearsay, but through experience. She saw the discipline, the mercy, the structure, the peace. And more than anything, she saw the light. Not the light of spectacle, but the light of truth. A quiet, sacred kind of light that doesn't ask for attention. It just is. And when she spoke, you could hear that she had been touched by it. That she had seen a side of Islam that few take the time to understand. This light doesn't burn with arrogance or demand to be worshipped. It doesn't stand on a stage or seek applause. It's the light you find in early morning prayers, in acts of kindness done in secret, in moments of deep gratitude when your heart bows to something greater than itself. It's the light that shines in surrender, in faith, in connection. And when someone sees that light, really sees it, they don't walk away the same. Jolie's recognition of Islam wasn't about rebellion or controversy. It was about clarity. It was about reaching a point in life where the soul wants something real, something timeless. And that's what Islam offered her. A path filled with intention, with meaning, with divine order in a chaotic world. That light she found didn't erase her pain or make her perfect. It guided her. It gave her direction. It offered her something most people spend their whole lives looking for, peace with purpose. And when she shared even a glimpse of that with the world, it made people stop. Because when someone known for living in the spotlight suddenly points to something beyond the spotlight, people pay attention, not because of who she is, but because of what she found. That kind of light challenges everything we're taught to chase. It humbles the ego. It softens the heart. It brings clarity to the things we thought we understood. And most of all, it invites others in. This wasn't just about Angelina Jolie. It was about what she discovered, a spiritual beauty in Islam that has been hidden behind the noise for too long. She saw the light of mercy, of discipline, of faith, of oneness, and she chose to speak on it. That alone was enough to shift perspectives, to plant seeds, to wake people up. Because in a world full of confusion and illusion, that kind of light doesn't just guide, it transforms. And once you've seen it, you don't want to live in the dark again. The light of Islam doesn't need to be forced on anyone. It just needs to be seen. And sometimes, all it takes is one person brave enough to say, I saw it. Because the truth is, in a world of noise, the light shines quiet, but it speaks loud to the heart. And once it touches you, nothing is ever the same again. There are moments in life when a few simple words can shake the foundation of everything people think they know. Angelina Jolie didn't come with an agenda, a campaign, or a carefully planned message. She didn't raise her voice, wave a banner, or try to prove a point. She simply spoke from the heart, and in doing so, she shattered decades of stereotypes, not with volume, but with silence, with presence, with truth. Her words about Islam didn't come with theatrics. They didn't need to, because when something is real, it doesn't need to shout. It echoes through people's hearts all on its own. For years, the world has been told one story about Islam, one narrative, recycled and repeated, designed to create fear, confusion and distance. But the problem with lies is they collapse when they're touched by even a small piece of truth. Jolie didn't go on a mission to correct the world. She just told her story. What she saw, what she felt, what she experienced. And that was enough. Enough to make people pause. Enough to make others question what they've been told. Because when someone from the outside dares to say there's beauty here, it exposes the cracks in the false images we've all been fed. Her voice reached places that lectures and books couldn't. Not because of fame, but because of honesty. When someone who has seen the world, someone with access to anything and everything, turns to something the world constantly misunderstands, it makes people think. Her words didn't just challenge the media's version of Islam. They challenged the idea that truth can be boxed in, labeled, and dismissed. They reminded people that truth isn't always loud. Sometimes it's soft. Sometimes it shows up in ways we least expect. And when it does, it has the power to turn doubt into curiosity, and curiosity into belief. There's a quiet kind of strength in what she did. She didn't defend Islam. She didn't argue. She just witnessed it. She saw the compassion, the discipline, the mercy, the structure, and the unwavering connection to God that defines the faith. And she didn't let the world's noise stop her from speaking on it. That alone broke more barriers than any debate ever could. Because there's power in the unexpected. There's power in someone saying, "I found peace here." Especially when it's a place the world has tried so hard to paint in darkness. Jolie's statement gave people permission to look again. To see Islam not through the lens of fear, but through the lens of someone who found truth, light and clarity within it. She reminded the world that faith is not owned by a select few. It's not a culture. It's not an ethnicity. It's a path, a connection, and anyone from anywhere can find themselves walking it. That kind of reminder doesn't need to be dramatic. Its quietness is its power, and that quietness echoed across hearts, who had been searching for something, real in a world full of noise. What she said wasn't just shocking, it was awakening. Not because it was controversial, but because it was honest. And sometimes, the most dangerous thing in a world built on illusion is a simple truth spoken without fear. Because when truth walks in quietly, lies start to fall apart without ever needing to raise a voice. There are certain moments when something is said, or something is heard, and you don't just understand it, you feel it. Not with your mind, but with your soul. It bypasses logic. It slips past all your doubts, your questions, your skepticism. It lands somewhere deep inside you and awakens something ancient, something eternal. That's because the soul doesn't need to be convinced. It already knows the truth. It's just waiting to be reminded. That's what happened when Angelina Jolie spoke about Islam. She didn't just say words. She echoed something the soul already recognized. We live in a world that teaches us to think our way through everything. Analyze this. Debate that. Study the facts. Compare the outcomes. But the truth, the real, spiritual, grounding truth can't always be measured. It can't always be explained. It's something you recognize, not with your eyes, but with your heart. That's the moment when the soul nods quietly and says, "Yes, I've heard this before. I remember." Jolie's words did that, not just because of what she said, but because of how she said it. She wasn't trying to persuade anyone. She was simply sharing what she had come to understand, and that made it even more powerful. The soul is not swayed by popularity or status. It doesn't care how famous you are, how rich you've become, or what you've achieved. It doesn't respond to ego. It responds to truth. And when that truth is spoken, something in the soul wakes up. That's why her statement didn't need drama. It didn't need a stage. It was honest. And honesty speaks in a language only the soul can truly understand. For some, it might have been the first time they even considered Islam beyond the headlines. For others, it might have been a confirmation of something they always felt but never dared to explore. Either way, it stirred something inside. It's incredible how one sincere expression can do what 1,000 explanations never could. Jolie wasn't trying to convert anyone. She wasn't trying to shock or provoke. She simply voiced what she had found, something that resonated deeply, something that brought her peace, something her soul recognized as truth. That quiet recognition is what shook people, because deep down, many of us carry that same knowing, that same buried awareness. We just don't always listen to it. We get distracted. We let fear speak louder than faith. But when truth comes close enough, the soul doesn't hesitate. It remembers. That memory isn't made of words. It's made of feeling, of certainty, of light. It's the kind of knowing that can't be unlearned. And once it's been awakened, everything else starts to shift. The way you see the world changes. The questions you ask begin to dig deeper. The search for meaning gets more personal, more urgent. Jolie's words didn't start that journey for everyone, but they did ignite something in many. A spark, a moment, a pause, a whisper in the soul that said, this is what you've been missing. The mind might resist. It might overthink, overanalyze, overcomplicate. But the soul is quiet. The soul is still. The soul just knows. And when it hears the truth, it doesn't need proof. It only needs to be reminded. Because truth doesn't always teach the soul something new. Sometimes it simply helps it remember what it already knew all along. In a time where everything seems temporary, trends, opinions, even values, it's rare to come across something that feels timeless. We live in a world obsessed with the new, the flashy, the next big thing. People change their beliefs like they change their outfits, constantly chasing what's popular, what's accepted, what gets the most attention. But the soul doesn't crave what's trending. It longs for what's real. That's what made Angelina Jolie's quiet turn toward Islam so profound. It wasn't a performance. It wasn't part of a public rebrand. It was a return to something deeper than the noise, deeper than the world's illusions. This wasn't about jumping on a bandwagon. It wasn't about being different for the sake of being different. It was about finding something solid in a world built on sand. Islam didn't just offer answers, it offered foundation, discipline, peace, purpose, and most importantly, it offered truth that doesn't bend with time. That kind of truth doesn't care about opinions. It doesn't need to trend to stay relevant. It's been here. It will be here. And those who truly seek it eventually find their way back, not because they're influenced, but because they're ready. That's what makes this moment so different. Angelina didn't just speak about belief. She spoke about alignment, about finding something that matched what her soul was already searching for. It wasn't new to her. It was right. That's what happens when you stop chasing the world and start looking inward. The world keeps shifting, but truth doesn't. And when you find that still, unchanging truth, you don't need validation from anyone else. You just know. You know you've come home. People were surprised, even shocked. But that shock wasn't because of the message. It was because of who was delivering it. Because the world assumes faith is only for a certain kind of person. But truth doesn't care about your past, your fame, your status. It just waits for you to be ready. And when you are, it welcomes you, quietly, without judgment. That's what happened here. Not a transformation for show, but a return to something eternal. Something that's been calling out to hearts long before the world started shouting over it. In a society where faith is often packaged, marketed, or watered down, Islam stands untouched. It doesn't adapt itself to trends. It calls people to rise above them. It offers structure in the midst of chaos, clarity in the fog, and peace in the heart of unrest. Jolie didn't find a trend, she found truth. And in that truth, she found herself. That's the beauty of this journey. It's not about becoming someone else. It's about becoming who you were always meant to be. And when you find something like that, something timeless, you don't need to defend it. You don't need to decorate it. You just live it, quietly, sincerely, completely. And that kind of sincerity speaks louder than any performance ever could. Because in a world chasing illusions, real faith doesn't follow trends. It brings you home to the truth.